Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Richard Linklater's Boyhood in 2014. So yes, here we are with my first Richard Linklater review on the channel. I've mentioned, this guy a couple of times on my channel, kind of in comment sections and stuff. Mainly, I don't know, maybe on my Blu-Ray collection video and stuff. I maybe kind of talked about it a little bit. But yes, I can't remember. Here we are with the Blu-ray of Boyhood, and yeah. This is one of the most famous films. I'm sure everyone's heard of Boyhood. A lot of people have seen it, and yeah, of course, it says on the front actually, one of the greatest films of the decade. Very, very acclaimed, this one. Critically, this is actually one of the few films to actually have 100 on Metacritic. Now that is something, when it came out, of course, it got one Oscar, but yeah, basically, aside from the Oscars, it did get loads of accolades, and many saying it was one of the greatest films ever made, and yeah. I saw it, I think, 2015 for the first time, and then I saw it again 2017, and now here we are with my third watch. So yes, Richard Linklater, we'll say it now, is one of my favourite filmmakers of all time. I've not seen loads and loads of his films, but I have seen the Before trilogy. Yeah, I've got the only Blu-ray I've got of that, is Before Midnight, which of course came out the year before the Boyhood. Yeah, and of course the other ones, it's hard to get the other ones on Blu-ray. Dazed and Confused, and I have got Waking Life, and Everybody Wants Some. Everybody Wants Some is, it's definitely not, one of his better works. But yes, I've seen School of Rock. This guy is one of my favourite filmmakers. That Before trilogy is something truly special. And this film is kind of like a combination, after seeing some of his works, a combination of a lot of his works throughout his career. And of course he does combine, Linklater kind of explores, different stages of life in his films. His School of Rock, of course, is, a lot younger audience, the kids and stuff in the film. And then, of course, Dazed and Confused is, a bit older kind of, teens into kind of adulthood, of course. Before trilogy, adulthood. And then this is kind of quite a lot of them rolled into one. So it's very, very interesting. It's kind of like as I say, a combination. And, of course, it's mainly famous, other than the acclaim, of course, for the fact that it was filmed over roughly 12 years, with the same actors. Ellar Coltrane plays Mason, of course. In the film, he's meant to be, from 6 to 18. You see all of his childhood, really, and then, of course, you're going into his teens and stuff, and then, ending, with him going off to college and stuff. This will be a spoiler review, of course. So, yes, what do I think of the film? Because it has got, I have to mention, it ranges from some saying it's one of the very, very best films ever made. Quite a few people, I've seen, Letterboxd and stuff, and YouTubers agreeing with this. Big kind of YouTubers saying it is one of the best films, and then a lot of people saying, that it's not as great as some make out, and not that I really concern myself with this, but some people as well saying it's literally one of the very worst films, or I have seen some reviews saying it's the worst film they've ever seen. So very, very divisive, despite the fact that it's got 100 on Metacritic by the critics. So yes, it is a very, very controversial film. And what do I think of it? Am I on the negative side or the positive side, or somewhere in between? Well, for me, it's one of the greatest films ever made, no doubt. No question for me. This is right up there with the greatest works of cinema, and just I think actually, how people kind of view cinema and stuff as well is how they're going to respond to the film. If, some people just don't like films that don't have a lot of obvious drama in the film, it's very, very naturalistic, and I can understand, definitely not everyone will love this film, because a lot of people will think, not necessarily people think, it's bad in the acting and stuff, and the direction, the use of music, but some people will just be underwhelmed. I've heard that a lot, because it doesn't, do anything special, but that's kind of subjective, because that's kind of like saying an Ozzy film, or a Wes Anderson or something like that, because they're very, very light, very similar actually, and they don't, some people just don't find them special. I personally really, really do. Ozzy is one of the greatest, so is Wes, but this film is definitely like that. It's very, very light at times, and it doesn't have villains in the film, typically, although it does have some abusive partners, of the mother of the film, played by Patricia Arquette, yes, and basically, yeah, this film, it shows the childhood, just the boy's life, really, Mason Jr., and, yeah, Ellar Coltrane, in the film has been criticised, but for me, he gives a stunning performance, and yes, Richard Linklater, of course, kind of didn't have an actual script, a full script when he started this. He was going back each year, of course, with the same cast, which is, it's not just praise for that, because the fact is, this is very, very risky stuff, and yes, you can praise that in itself, but it's not going to get 100 on Metacritic just for that. But yeah, it's very, very risky to do this actually, and it's not. Some people say it's easier, but no, because of course you've got the same actors, and sometimes in films, of course, the obvious stuff being, when people play older versions, it's harder to connect and stuff. But actually, no, this is very, very hard because these actors, a lot of them were in other films, during this, and of course, two of the other before trilogy films were released within the time of this as well, so it's something special. And yes, but what it adds up to in the end, it's something so naturalistic. You kind of, even once again, I was kind of noticing, or kind of just, wow, actually it's changed already. The kind of the parts in the film. Lorelei Linklater, of course, the daughter of Richard Linklater, plays the sister, Sam, and there's moments early on where you kind of, she's already changed, she's already grown up. It's very, very subtle at times, the changes, of course, over the film. There's no obvious, jumps in the cinematic terms. It's not really truly a cinematic film. Yeah, it probably is more cinematic than most of his other works, you could say. Certainly more so than before trilogy. It's more, of a pure kind of Linklater film. Dazed and Confused, again, you could say it's a bit more. Something, a bit more cinematic, but this one is kind of a mesh, as I said. Loads of different the techniques that he's used over his career, and just I think many people, as I say, will not find it all that compelling, but it just once again rewatching it's just once again just even better than I remembered. This is just one of my very favourite films. It's not top 30, but it's not far off of that kind of thing. It's definitely well into my top 60. It's just. Definitely my favourite film of 2014 personally, all the Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff, and so many great, great films, not to discount them. Birdman, I love Birdman, I've got most of the Oscars and stuff. This only got one for Patricia Arquette, of course, and playing the mother. Yes, this film, for me, as well, my favourite character is played by Hawke as the father, and this is an experience like no other. It's one of the most spiritual films. I just relate to everything in this film. Although not everything Mason does, I've actually experienced. I don't agree with and stuff. But I relate to it. In terms of the human understanding in the film. Basically, you don't have to say Dazed and Confused. I'm not like a lot of the characters in that film, but I can fully appreciate it. Of course, it's the same thing here, and it's just the way that Linklater writes this film. The way the dialogue is so organic. Although this film is not, as some would say, just completely, nothing in the sense that he has definitely, kind of composed, a language to the film within the dialogue. It's not completely like a documentary. There's a very, very distinct difference here, and there is actually, kind of, the dialogue is basically not like someone talking in real life fully. It is cinema. It's not just kind of like a documentary kind of thing. But it's very, very naturalistic at the same time, and all the dialogue, he's one of the greatest screenwriters in cinema for me. Just the way it feels natural, but it's always engaging, and because there's films that can feel natural, or documentaries that are just literally people talking, of course, but this is very, very different, and it's always engaging. You have got a lot of drama in the film, despite many people saying it's boring and dramatically. Just look at what happens, of course, to the mother of the film. Patricia Arquette gives an absolutely stunning performance, and of course as Olivia, and she goes through so much in the film, and the drama. It's pretty obvious there, of course her husbands she gets it throughout the film. Very, very tragic, and very true to life. The way that she does, it's very interesting to see once again how these these partners, they seem okay at first, but then of course they turn abusive and just kind of treat her like crap basically, and it's really, really tragic, and it's very, very honest. That does unfortunately happen in a lot of relationships, and just an honest portrayal here. Very, very sad and moving stuff, but just in the end, of course, you know, it does. The final act is not completely hopeful and stuff, but for Mason it is. For the mother, of course, not so much kind of thing. It ends on a surprisingly very, very tragic note with her kind of thing, and desperation and yeah, heartache. But of course, when Mason goes off, you know, to college towards the end of the film, and the song, you know, Hero plays, you know, it's just one of the most, for me, most uplifting moments just I've ever experienced in cinema. Truly profound. You know, it's a film that really could, you know, it could be described as one that, you know, kind of creeps up on you. And you know, the first time I saw it, I was blown away. But definitely the second time is when it really, I had to rewatch, of course, to really see where it roughly is in my list. And you know, it's just the second time, you know, that I watched this that I really knew how much I loved it. You know, top 50, top 60 films of all time for me, and you know, it's just an instant masterpiece. But yeah, you know, something that when I rewatched this, it's such an experience to return to. You know, and it just is one of the greatest films for me. You know, all the characters, you know, are presented in such meaningful ways, and you know, Linklater. It's not kind of on paper, you know, how interesting this is. It's how he elevates, like Ozu, you know, and some other filmmakers, of course, elevates what some people would call boring. For me, it's definitely not in this film, and in many of his films, many Ozu films. You know, it's not about what, you know, you typically think if someone described the film to you. It's about how it plays out on cinema. You know, on the screen, and you know, just how he elevates just what you call normal conversations, you know, and just in that sense, you know, this is such a genius film because there's not a lot of films can do it this well. For me, this is a perfect film in every sense, and again, many people have said, you know, the character of Mason Jr., of course, you know, kind of becomes a bit annoying, you know, as he grows up, but you know, there's a point where it's so easy to see that this is because, you know, some people respond to this like this because, yes, it's in his teenage years, and it's very, very true. It's a lot of, you know, when you come into that age, you know, you maybe quite whiny and stuff, and yeah, kind of just not, you know, maybe a bit disconnected at times and stuff. But it's so realistic in that sense, and I did, you know, throughout the entire film, I was always compelled by this character. He's such a complex one. Ellar Coltrane just gives a stunning performance, despite what many say it's an awful performance. I think it's a great one, and very, very hard to pull off, but it never feels like this is forced, and just the transition, you know, kind of, it maybe even though this is very, very a gradual film, it feels very, a point in the film, you know, in the middle, it feels a bit maybe a bit harsh, the transition, because of course, there's that couple of years, you know, sometimes when people do change in particular ways, and yeah, but it's hard maybe to adjust to that. But really, for me, the second half is a masterpiece. You know, I probably prefer the first half of the film. You know, maybe just because I respond to it even more. You know, and it's something that's more, yeah, more uplifting. Even though there's a lot of, you know, dark moments. But it's just, yeah, this exploration of childhood, the way Linklater has captured this is truly special. This is a special film that I connect to on every level, and the use of music, the way it's like a time capsule. You know, for many of the songs that he used, you know, of course it opens with Coldplay's Yellow, which is a wonderful song, truly genius song, and then you've got so many great songs in the film. I love how, of course, the father, played by Ethan Hawke, Mason, you know, kind of creates this album, of course, the Black Album, and this is just you know, a kind of mix of many of the Beatles solo works. Of course, being a massive Beatles fan, they're my favourite band. You know, this was great to see. When I first saw it, I didn't know anything about the film really, and then seeing this, I love this moment of the film where he gives them the present. Of course, it's just amazing, and then Band on the Run plays and stuff at the beginning. I just love all the conversations, you know, it's not just about these characters, it's about what's happening around them. You know, it's kind of, you know, pop culture and stuff that they reference, and video games, the way that they're portrayed in the film, I love. You know, I think, you know, when he's playing Halo and stuff, I just love all these things, the attention to detail, and just the comments on, you know, kind of society and the way that time passes, is something that is truly genius. It's a wonderful film, not just for these main characters or the side characters are just always memorable. But yes, the way that it kind of shows time passing and things changing, you know, and of course at the same time you've got the arc of Mason and of course Sam. Yes, Ethan Hawke's, you know, the father, and Patricia Arquette's character as well. You know, you've got all these things going on. You've got tragedy, you've got uplifting moments, you've got joy, you've got just so many things roll into one epic film. You know, this is epic in length, and the scope is something else. You know, this is an ambitious film, despite, you know, not starting off with a full script. So this is something else. You know, it's something that's very, very loose. You can compare it to Malick works, probably more so Tree of Life actually, which is very interesting. You know, these two filmmakers making you know, around the same time, sort of you know, these films that kind of encompass quite a lot of their, you know, their ways and kind of things that they've explored. We're all into kind of a film that covers many different stages of life, you could say, and you know, very ambitious films. You know, this is comparable. I think this is a better film, but yeah, you know, this film is an ambitious one, and for me, it's perfectly executed. You know, I think every moment in the film, you know, it's got so much comedy in the film. This is the thing, and it's so honest in its comedy, never forced. You know, it just feels, it's just stuff that, you know, constantly I was laughing at, especially the first half. Something that, you know, you can connect to. For me, on every level, it's just it's a wonderful film. The visuals, of course, at times kind of documentary-like, a bit different, but yes, mainly the editing that really elevates that, and of course, yeah, because the nature and stuff is captured wonderfully. You know, the conversations very subtly, people might not realise, but they are masterfully constructed. But wow, the editing is something that is truly something to behold. And yes, this film is flawlessly directed for me. It's really is a special film. This is well into my top 60, and I'm not going to say what I prefer out of this and the Before trilogy, because let me tell you, they're very, very close at times. Maybe I prefer this to, I'll say, one of the films in that trilogy, my least favourite in that trilogy, which is still one of my favourites. But wow, you know, these works, you know, his greatest works, are right up there for me with the best works in cinema, some of the best. And yes, if someone says, what's your favourite film of 2014, this is it. You know, I think this is the best and the most meaningful to me. And yeah, wow, I just think this is one of the most wonderful films. The way it explores family, you know, the kind of the heartbreaks, you know, of life, and the joys of, you know, childhood, for example, and just, you know, kind of parenting. You know, this is what it really explores wonderfully, is parenting. You know, kind of something that I can connect to as well. You know, divorced parents and stuff like this, and yeah, struggling and just you know, the way that people deal with this, and the way families are very, very different at times. There's a lot of comparisons in the film, and yes, I loved as well the kind of the way that, you know, the children of these two partners, you know, Patricia Arquette and her first kind of husband, you know, the way that they form friendships, you know, very early on, of course, that first set of you know, the family there, and yeah, you know, that's really, really sad, of course, and really tragic when they part ways, and yeah, of course. But you've got so much joy in the film, you've got so much tragedy at the same time, and at the end of the day, it is a wonderful experience, truly something else. And for me, cinematically, you know, just spiritually, this is one of the very finest films for me, and I have to give it 100% plus tier S, no doubt, no question in my mind. This has always just been, you know, since I first saw it, something special. It just took one rewatch to really solidify and confirm where this is on my list, in my top 60, and I can just, it's such a comforting film. It's a one that is truly powerful, you know, just little moments throughout the film, but even especially the big moments, and you know, where there's big events in the film, you know, this is when it really hits me and moves me to tears. You know, it's something that, this is a special film. I don't get the hate, personally, although I can understand how people will be underwhelmed, because I know not everyone would like films in this style, you know, this approach, because it always depends, of course. Something like this, very, very subjective to how you respond to it. You could just think it's nothing special, you could think that, or you could really, really just connect to this film, and the way it is minimalist at times, but it's how he places an emphasis on these key moments in everyday life, and just humanity. Linklater really just achieves one of the greatest films. You know, what it kind of says about humanity and growing up. The coming of age arc, of course, of Mason is one of the best in film. You know, this is not, you know, the best film for me of the 2010s, but it's one of the very best, and I think it's something that just it speaks to me on every level. As I've said, this is cinematic perfection in my eyes. You know, it's such a joy to watch. It's so powerful. The scope of it, you know, it's kind of adventurous at times. You know, such an energy. This is one of his very best performances. Even Hawke, you know, he is just at times the star of the show. Ethan Hawke is absolutely outstanding in this film. I cannot stress that enough. He adds so much his character. You know, the warmth of him. You know, the wisdom. You know, he's the most wise character in the film. Even though, you know, at first you may not feel that, but certainly his arc and the way he transforms over the years is something that's truly wonderful. The relationship between him and his children, especially of course Mason, but you know, Lorelei Linklater, she is brilliant in the film. You know, and there's been criticisms of her. The whole film has been criticised, which you know it's open. Every film is open to criticism. You know, but I really think that this is something that some people just won't respond to, and that's fair enough. But for me, it speaks to me on every level. It's truly special. A magnum opus, a sprawling magnum opus, and just perfect in every sense. The editing, the music use, the dialogue in the film, these characters, they are so alive and just so compelling. I think that, you know, it has got all the elements at times, if you look, of a great cinematic, you know, and dramatic piece. You know, it's definitely all there. It's just the style and the approach that some people might not quite get, or just not respond to and not care for. You know, even though they may understand the film, they may not think it's a mind-blowing film. It is for me, and yes, if you've not seen it, you have to check it out. It's one of the films you have to see. This is something that's never been done, and because it's Richard Linklater, that's the bottom line. This guy is unique, and you know, he's one of a kind. He really is a special filmmaker, and this, understandably, you know, I can understand if some say it's his best. Find out if it's my favourite when, of course, I do my the rest of my reviews for this guy. Definitely within the next couple of months. And yes, Boyhood, a magnum opus in my opinion. Very divisive film, but for me, I'm definitely on the extremely positive side. Saying it's one of the absolute, you know, finest films ever made, and yeah, truly special film for me. This is something that I absolutely adore. And yes, thanks for watching my review.